time for a chat with MPP Bobbi and Brady, Haldeman Norfolk. Bobby, I got so many things I want to get to today. We're not going to start with Bill 98, but we're going to get there. I want to talk about moms. Mother's Day's coming. But first, can you give me an update on how everything went last week? I know you had this big dinner, and I'm interested to know what people were thinking. What were you hearing there?
Yeah, thanks, Dave. It's great to be here as always. Yeah, 1 week ago today, I had my first fundraiser as the independent MPP or independent candidate, and we had a record number of people in attendance. 283 people attended a dinner for their independent member, and you know, there were people in that room who had never been to a political function. They had never been to one of the events that I ran in the past as the conservative president. And, when I asked those folks, why did you come? It's because they like the fact that they are being represented by an independent. They like the things that I'm saying. They like how I'm representing them in a very genuine way. And they appreciate that I can go to Queen's Park and I'm not under the thumb of anyone at Queen's Park. I'm able to say, what I want, where I want, how I want on their behalf without being told, hey, that doesn't really fit in line with our party principles, that type of thing, or what we're working on today. So they really like that. People have largely grown cynical of politicians, and rightfully so. There's a huge disregard. There's a huge disrespect for the electorate. And, I reminded folks last Thursday night that disrespect shouldn't exist because we are paid as politicians. We are paid by the taxpayer, and the taxpayer should have every right to know what we're working on. They should have every right to, sit down with their member or chat with their member at some point and articulate to them what they feel the concerns are for the area. And that's not happening. I feel and people get it that decisions are largely being made by one or two or a handful of people in tall buildings, and we've got to stop that.
Was there anyone, like, when you were you talking to the, I know you mixed and mingled. I know you talked to everyone. You said hi. Was there any one issue that kept coming up that people were asking about locally that they're saying, hey, we need to talk about this? Was there anything that you saw?
Yeah, land development is still a huge thing, and largely because our farmers are worried about that. And I talked about that. I talked about my private members bill. I assured them that my fight to protect Ontario's most productive land must continue. There's no question that this discussion must continue. And I will be the person to ensure that discussion continues. It's frustrating. It's frustrating for farmers who, say, hey, I want to put up a retirement home, or I want to put up a home for my son or daughter, which will ensure the succession of that farm. And yet they're not allowed to do that. But a speculator or a developer can drive up that driveway, knock on the door, offer millions of dollars, and the entire farm is paved over with absolutely no succession plan, right? And so, it frustrates people that these things are happening that really don't show that there's any sort of common sense being exercised in this province.
I recently read a story in the Huffington Post on a young farmer who was trying to farm in Ontario, southern Ontario, but him and his family were packing up and going to PEI because they could afford the land there to farm.
Mm-hmm.
Like, right there, right? That tells you, like, this
Yeah.
kid went to school he wanted to be a farmer. He didn't have a farm left to him. There was no family farm. He had to start from scratch. He couldn't do it here.
Well,
Like,
it's funny you say that because this week I sit on the finance committee, as you know, and last week we heard Bill 79, the labor legislation. Monty McNaughton presented his bill, and then we have the opportunity to question him. This week it was Bill 85, which is the budget bill. So Minister Bethlen Falvey was before committee, and then in the afternoon, the people who public consultations are held on that bill. So there's people who appear who either don't like what's in the budget or people who do. And there was a delegation, before us that was supporting the government and said, we need to have things made close to home, and therefore, investment in like Volkswagen in St. Thomas is a fantastic thing. And so, I agreed with much of what this gentleman was saying. And I told him that. I said, I agree with you. Things need to be made close to home. But I'm not sure that I am in the business, or I should be picking winners and losers as a legislator. I don't think that giving billions of dollars to Volkswagen is a wise decision when we have a bunch of farmers who are saying, hey, why don't you invest in us? Because if there's one thing that, I'm like a broken record with this, if there's one thing that we want made close to home, it's our food. So while I sit here and I go, yeah, it's great that, we're having things made close to home, here's an example of the government picking a winner and a loser. And he
Yeah.
picked a company. They picked a company to invest in rather than investing in our farmers. Our farmers would love that type of investment, right? So that we could ensure that a farmer or a son or a daughter could purchase the farm or purchase land to continue growing food in this province. And yet we're not making those investments.
And that's when you get back to, I mean, we're going to talk about Bill 98 and the trades and all that. And you look at someone that wants to farm, that's what he wants for his livelihood. And we're sending him to another province to make a go of it, right? Because he can't afford it here. I think that speaks volumes too about where we need to get to. Again, like you're saying, protect the farmers or do something that's going to give them that incentive to be farming here. You know what I mean?
It's sad because, part of the reason that I became a conservative in this province many years ago is because the Conservative Party represented, in my opinion, the Conservative Party represented rural Ontario, represented the farm family, which we have to protect. And I know there's people out there who come back at me and say, all you care about is farmers. No, I care about everyone. And caring about farmers means I care about you because I want you to eat, and I want you to eat well. I want you to be able to access food close to home, and I want you to be able to access it at a fair price. And what we're doing in this province is not ensuring that we're going to have, food security. And when we don't have food security, we know what happens to the cost of food. So, it's so frustrating that, a government that says they are, a government of rural Ontario, of rural people, of farm families. I don't see it. I don't see it anymore.
I gotta agree with you on that. I, it's such a good topic too, because if you don't, when you were talking there, I was just thinking, well, without the farmers, like without the farm, that's what our history is. Haldimand, Norfolk, that and some fishing. Before tourism became such a big priority, farming and fishing were basically the two main industries in Haldimand, Norfolk. Fishing's pretty much disappeared. It's very small what's left. I get that. But at the same time, now we're seeing our farming disappear slowly. Like you said, it's become, the ivory towers, I guess we'll say, don't see the need or understand the importance of it at this time in society. It's critical. I mean, the cost of food alone going up, right? Like,
yeah. And once it's gone, it's very difficult to bring it back. But to your point of, history, sadly, we see a movement in this province, in this country, of erasing our history. And not all of our history is proud. I understand that. But it still exists. That history still exists. That's how we learn. It's how we move forward. And so you're right. I mean, I feel like, they're trying to change our way of life. And as, in doing so, they are changing the history of this area. And we have a proud history. We should be proud of our area. We should be proud of what we have contributed to this province. And yet they're trying to change us. They're trying to erase that. And it makes me really sad.
Okay, we'll move on because me and you will just go on and on and on. And
Yeah,
we want to keep them moving along. Let's go to Mother's Day first. Mother's Day is coming. Next month in the Hub, May, I've written a column. And one of the things that I discovered when I was writing it, I decided to look at, obviously, I think my mother, hardworking woman, 80 years old. But another perspective was all the women that had influence in my life. I don't think we look at that enough, because all of a sudden I was like, oh, darn, I forgot about this person, how one of my best friends, known since kindergarten, known her since kindergarten, right? It's those types of relationships that build communities as well. And that's what keeps it strong. So I thought I'd give you a moment to say thank you to any moms or women that had big influences in your life.
Yeah, I think that the contributions of those, the people who contribute to our lives, we need to celebrate them more often, whether they're male or female. I mean, I've had many males in my life who have given me the confidence to move forward and to try things that I probably wouldn't. But you're right, women, mothers, they kind of put their head down and they just get the job done. And they're juggling so much. I've been accused sometimes of, oh, you're always a few minutes late. Well, that's right, because I'm worried about emptying the dishwasher. I'm worried about, making sure socks and underwear are clean and put in, coming out of the washer and put in the dryer. And women are juggling so many things. And I don't think that they quite get the credit for all the things that they juggle in life. They're a therapist. They're the laundry person. They're
The cab driver,
um,
yeah.
and I take my role as a mom. It's the most important role that I have because what we instill in our young people as parents, not only as moms but as parents, is what we're leaving we're leaving society for the next generation, and we have to take that job very seriously, and we have to do a good job of it. And I think that most moms out there, I get you girls, like, you're busting your hump and you're tired and you don't feel you're worthy. And we often compare ourselves to things that we're now seeing on social media or we're seeing on television, and it's not fair. It's an unfair comparison, visually and emotionally and everything else. And I just say, you know what, you're being seen and you're being appreciated, and you don't even know it. And I get how you feel, because I'm the same person. I wake up and sometimes I don't think I'm good enough, and and yet we just put our head down, and we get through the day and we do it to the best of our ability without complaining. So to all the moms out there, I see you, I feel you, and I know your pain, and I wish them all a happy Mother's Day.
So great. I like that. It worked out better than I thought. It's a good segue into Bill 98 because
Yeah,
moms are probably going to have a lot to say about this bill at some point.
they might. Yeah.
Um, I read your column, and
Mhm.
perhaps you want to give a quick overview to the folks if they haven't had an opportunity to go to your website and read your column on Bill 98 and Better Schools and Outcomes Act, and
Yeah.
get your thoughts.
So, yeah, Bill 98 was introduced recently, and we voted on it in the legislature the other day, and I believe it's going to committee. And it's a bill that, is being described as a bill that will overhaul Ontario's education system and strengthen back to basics. And, there's nothing in the bill that entirely concerns me, Dave. So I voted in favor of it going to committee to have it dissected even further and to make recommendations. My problem with the bill is that it doesn't go far enough to actually make any sort of meaningful change. To me, it's administrative. The biggest thing in the bill is with respect to training trustees. And I'm okay with that, because there are school boards in this province that are running amok, and they are dealing with a lot of money, and they're not properly trained on how to make decisions with that kind of money. And, anybody can kind of throw their hat in the ring and become a trustee, and they are in charge of spending that money. They're in charge of our kids. And that's, it's important. It's an important job, and they need to be trained appropriately. So those aspects of the bill, I really don't have a problem with. My fear is it's just scratching the surface. To me, it's legislation that is brought forward to say to mom, dad, families, hey, look, we're doing things in education, but are they meaningful? Is it what we really need? No, we got to actually make bigger changes. And we have to make life easier for our educators. The reason that we have people quitting, the reason we can't attract people to the teaching profession anymore, despite the fact that it's a good paying job, is because we're not respecting the people at the front of the classroom. We are, and I just had this conversation with a couple on my way out of the Port Dover Community Center this morning. I spoke at South Coast Probus, which was fantastic, by the way. But they told me that their daughter's a teacher, and I had alluded to, the teaching profession in my speech this morning. And I said, look, it's not fair. It's not fair that our teachers are required to be all sorts of things outside of a teacher. And I get it. It takes a village to raise, a child. And our teachers did that back when we were young, but there's so many other things being brought before the classroom these days that make teachers uncomfortable. They don't feel that they are equipped to be doing some of the things that they're doing, and yet it's being demanded that they do them, and we have to stop that. So is there anything in the bill that concerns me that I think is dangerous? No, not at all. But it's not creating meaningful change for our teachers, and most importantly for our young people.
I read your column yesterday. You and I were talking about this off there. I read your column. I liked it, and you got me intrigued. So I started looking at Bill 98. I pulled it up and spent last night and this morning going through it. That's why I told you I didn't shave for you today, because
you poor fella.
I know, because it got me so fired up, riled up, because I totally agree with you on a lot of those points. But the one I was looking into this bill thinking, okay, maybe this, the amount of money they're investing, okay, maybe we're going to get some results as far as smaller classrooms. Was my number one thought. I hear from teachers, that's what I hear. Nothing there. The money that they are spending, it means like for every 5 public schools, 1 more teacher. Not going to make an impact, right? I get that they want better numbers for reading and writing and math. But again, you're not going to get there with this type of format that you're using.
No.
My opinion, it's a big bill to read through. There's so many subsections. I didn't see anything, and maybe you did, and you can correct me if I'm wrong. I would totally welcome that, on the mental health wellness of our children at all. And again, this is not something teachers are trained in, but we've got to look at aspects of how we can integrate it into our preschools, so that when those kids get that best start program, like when they get the best possible tools socially at that 4 and 5 years old, that's going to lead to the trades at some point when you get them off to that strong beginning. And we're not even doing that right, in my opinion. That's just my opinion right now. We seemed concerned in this bill, tell me if I'm wrong, more about what are we going to do with this leftover property? And I was like, what, guys, can we focus on the problem? There's the schools in the Ontario province need $17 billion in repair. They only allocated $15 billion over 10 years. That's not good enough.
No.
In my opinion.
No.
Go nuts.
Like I say, it's scratching the surface and it's not getting the job done. It's one of those things where it's like, okay, we're doing something and it's a distraction, right? And we will see that it doesn't, really get the job done. And there's so many things that we could talk about on education and, the mental health aspect. We're going to have a problem with mental health of our young people. We already do. I mean, I was at a meeting a few weeks ago where we were talking about that, and the gentleman talking about it beside me actually was giving the reasons why we have these issues, but couldn't recognize that maybe him and a bunch of others were part of the problem. You know what I mean? And, like, not part of the problem, but
you got to have a solution here, right?
You got to look at it. The solution, and you have to admit that you made a mistake. Admit that you made a mistake and find something different. And I'm thinking to myself, you were sitting here and you are articulating why we have this problem, but yet you won't admit that you are one of those people who actually push for things to be designed this way. And that bothers me, right? Admit we made a mistake, move on and make it better. And I think one of the ways that we make, we integrate mental health supports at such a young, at a young age is by, showing them a healthy classroom, teaching them. I feel that we are a bit of a thin-skinned society these days where everything is offensive. Let's not teach kids that everything is offensive. Let's actually teach them about positivity. Let's teach them that, hey, you know what? We just need to be good people. That's what you and I were taught. We were taught to be little warriors when we were young and to be good people. And we are getting so distracted by all these other things that I think kids are so largely confused on what is actually right and wrong and what is good and bad. And I talk to a lot of kids, and they're confused. And it's got to be hard on the teacher too, right? So
Right.
I mean, I think there's a way of dealing with mental health, but I think the way of dealing with it is much simpler than what we actually think the answer to be.
The Liberal government instituted, and I can't remember the year, but they put daycares back. They put daycares into schools.
Mm-hmm.
The ratios went up. So suddenly that child that might have been in a 1 to 6, 1 to 7 ratio is now in a 1 to 16 ratio. They're not getting the same attention. They're not learning the same social skills. You're
No.
taking them out of an environment that they were learning in because they wanted more seats in the classroom.
Mm-hmm.
Wrong way of doing things. Totally wrong way of doing things. It should have been left the way it was and let those components build your system out to kindergarten. And we stopped doing that. We took all that and wanted to pile it into a school setting that these kids, and now you're seeing the repercussions 10 years later that they were not ready for. That was
That's right.
totally out to lunch. And the
Mm-hmm.
conservatives should have recognized that when they came into power, but they didn't. And then they tried to, here's money for daycares. And daycares went, we don't want you telling us how to do our jobs. They literally were turning down the money because they didn't want to give the government control of it.
That's right. I had
And
those conversations with
right,
Dave.
exactly. So
Mm-hmm.
again, you're not listening to what your public's saying. You're
Mm-hmm.
not,
Yep.
there, I agree with you. There's simpler ways to get to solve this problem. And
Mm-hmm.
the numbers, the ratios, that's the number, that's where all the problem
Yep.
starts. And you
Well, we
can't do
shut
that.
down all these schools.
When the other thing is that you brought up, and I think it's a great point, we need to emphasize this. When a kid goes to preschool, do you think a kid at preschool says, "Hey, where are you from?" No. What do they say? What's your name? Do you want to play?
Do you want to play?
Bang. That's what we're
Yes.
missing. So
Yes.
get back to the basics.
That's
And
right.
we're spending, like we said, we're only going to get 1 in 5. One public school out of 5 is going to get one more teacher. It ain't going to make the impact. I agree with you. This is just, I want
It's
to.
tinkering. It's called tinkering.
Yeah, I don't. I don't know how you do your job. I got to be honest with you because I spend all that time going through. I don't even know when you find time to read bills because I went through reading that whole thing, and I just kept getting more frustrated because as your kids are bigger, my kids are bigger, and I worry about that next generation. I mean, you and I see that it's flawed and it's broken. Why are these people that are in charge not understanding that they're not giving our children, if you want to have a better society or you want our economic growth, start them young and teach them properly, let them have those social skills first, they'll figure it out. You and I grew up on Legos and building blocks. That's probably
Mm-hmm.
where all the plumbers came from and all the engineers. I don't know, but
Yeah.
hell,
You know,
and
Dave, I talked about this on my dinner last week, and I really think we are in bad ways because government, and I'm not making excuses for policymakers, but we are in this whole bubble of you know political correctness and everything else, and there are times where we can't be all things to all people, and I feel that legislators are afraid to step outside that bubble because the terrain is just set up with landmine after landmine, and it wasn't that way when we were young. And I feel that
do you know why it wasn't that way when we were young? Because we respected one another.
that's right.
That's the one word
Mhm.
that we've got away from.
Go back to what I said. Just teach people to be kind, teach people to be respectful. We shouldn't always agree. We should not
Oh,
always agree. That's not how we get the best decisions. And yet we are constantly offended when somebody disagrees with us. Why are we offended? We can be warriors. We can agree to disagree, and we can still be kind, empathetic, sympathetic people. But in this day and age, you don't
it,
see it.
it's respect because I do think I have some of my best friends. We totally, and you and I have had this conversation. You and I are the same way. We disagree on things. But the point is, if you can educate me on something and I can help you see something else in something, then we're just making both of us better people in the long run. And I think that's the end goal here, right? And I think with the education system, you and I could talk till we're blue. I know we're not going to solve this problem, but I think there's something to be said for stepping back and looking at what worked. Maybe look at other countries, see what
Mm-hmm.
works, and
Mm-hmm.
quit putting patchwork on a system that is not, it's not working. And I agree with you. Our frontline workers, our teachers, our ECEs, our special ed teachers, they're burning out at a high ratio,
Yeah.
and they can't do it. They just can't do it. We're expecting
No,
too much.
no, they can't. I just want to read something from my speech from last week, and I used it at Probus again today, and they appreciated it. But I said, here's what I said: it's time we stop teaching our kids that even the slightest thing should be taken as inappropriate or offensive. We need to build warriors, young people not afraid of challenges, not afraid to take chances, not afraid of failing. Warriors persevere, and they are who I want in charge. And I think that in Haldeman, Norfolk, we have warriors. We also have people who give of their time and their energy to ensure that our communities thrive. They're warriors, but they're also proof that you can be a warrior and be benevolent. And we aren't encouraging that enough. We are doing the exact opposite, and it's providing a huge disservice to our communities, to our kids, and we have got to stop finding reasons to be offended, and we have to start agreeing to disagree. We have to agree to meet in the middle, or we're in big trouble.
Yeah, I agree with you. And I think what you and I saw coming out of the pandemic, just with within the education system, with the kids struggling, the homeschooling, think of the child that never actually got to go to preschool, then all of a sudden starts school.
Mm-hmm.
That anxiety must be incredible. Like you never had those, you didn't have time for those social aspects of your life to grow. Now
Yeah.
you're thrown into this, right? You're like,
Yeah.
well, you got to go to school now, right? And
Yeah, and you were told to keep your kid at home and not go to the next door neighbors and socialize there either. And then, those kids who may have had more of a like an incremental socialization weren't given that because they weren't allowed to go socialize with other people. And now you throw them into the system, and that's what teachers of elementary school kids tell me. They say, "Oh man, this is really really sad because you have kids who were never socialized."
yep.
And now all of a sudden they're in a classroom full of all these kids, and it's overwhelming. It's really sad to watch, they tell me.
And at what point do teachers across the province say enough? It's
Well,
coming. It's coming.
teachers have to stand up, and I say this to all my teacher friends: please join me. Be honest in what you're seeing. Be honest in how you feel that this needs to be fixed, because I was actually during pre-budget consultations, OSSTF and OECTA were at the finance committee table one day,
Yeah.
testifying or presenting their delegation. And I asked them, because there was a previous presenter who had said, social justice issues in front of the classroom are creating a problem for our educators. They're also creating a remedial system, a remedial help system in the colleges and universities sector. Kids who are leaving high school because they have not had the proper education are now needing remedial help. My daughter has seen that at university. And so I asked OSSTF and I asked OECTA how they felt about this. And their response to me was basically, wow, you are not a very sympathetic and empathetic MPP, and you should not even be here asking this question. And I shot right back at them. I said, we can build sympathetic, empathetic people without all of these things that teachers are required to do. The proof is we are the living proof. These things weren't taught to us in this manner when we were young. So we are the living proof. And I took one of their OSSTF staff people took it upon himself to come to a Facebook page in Haldeman, Norfolk, and try to discredit me. It didn't work. But I shot right back at them. If you don't believe what I'm saying, if you don't believe in the question that I'm asking you, then you need to start having some more honest and open conversations with the people you represent, because those folks are the ones who are telling me the way it is. And some of these representatives who are representing our teachers are not telling the truth, or our teachers are too afraid to tell them the truth.
Yeah. I'm, that to your point there, I think I want to go back to the basic thing that you and I started on with this conversation was all the first thing to address is classroom ratios,
Mm-hmm.
because I think I can see both sides of the coin on this. That's where your teachers are um, are struggling, because
Mm-hmm.
how can one person teach 30 people, 30 kids? How can one teacher, even if she
Yeah.
has an EA in there, how can they
Yeah.
do that? Those are big numbers. It's like me telling you to take out 30 people in the Conservative Party for lunch and then teach them about Haldeman Norfolk. You can't do it, right? Like, it's
Yeah.
just like, it's that kind of numbers. And I think that's where I think the focus should, if Premier Ford, if you're listening, and I'm sure he probably checks in on you every so often, if you're listening, just
Hope so.
that start there. Start there. Like, sit down at that table and talk to these folks and see.
And
Because
I would say to I would say to the listeners too is we always have to think of the long game. So, I was involved in trying to save small schools many years ago. Our Lady of La Salette in Norfolk County, for example, it had 54 kids in it. And we were told, as parents, we were told you can't provide an education to a school of that size. Some of the classrooms had 10, 15 kids in them, and we were told, no, those are too small. And now we have classrooms, because we've shut down all these schools, we now have classrooms of 35. And so we have to be careful what we wish for. We have to think what the long game is. I would bet that we would love to have some of those Our Lady of La Salettes and some of those small schools back nowadays, because where are we going to put these kids when we do make class sizes smaller? We're going to have to bring in portables again, right? And
it's crazy.
it was short-sighted thinking under the previous government to close all those schools.
A number of years ago, I interviewed two teachers from Aruba, and one of the things, they came to Ontario and they looked at our schools. This is probably going back 2008, 9, 10, and they were amazed because we had whiteboards and we had these great systems in our classrooms. And they're like, "Oh, we need that in our school. We don't have those things. Our school's just one flight of stairs and there's 200 kids and blah blah blah." And I said, "Well, do you have elevators?" They said, "No." I said, "Well, how? Do you have kids with disabilities?" They said, "Yeah, we have children in wheelchairs." And I said, "Well, how do they get up the stairs?" I said, "Well, the other kids carry them." And I went, "No, you got it right. We got it wrong."
Absolutely,
Because
100%.
you understand the value of community. You understand
Yeah.
of making sure, don't bully. And nobody's bullying those kids. They're helping them because they're part of that team. They're part of that
That's how
school.
you build empathetic, sympathetic, good people, right there.
Well, but they were doing that. They looked at our
Mhm.
system and
Yeah.
were envious.
Yeah.
And I said, "No, I think we
No,
need more of your system back in our system. We need a better
absolutely.
balance." So I
Absolutely.
think, not that that's going to solve any educational problems, but when you break it down, and when you, believe it or not, this will give you a laugh. 3 or 4 years ago, I sat with four university students, four young guys, university, all from Haldeman, Norfolk. And they asked me what I thought of the education system. I said, in 20 years, it's going to reverse. And they said, "What do you mean?" I said, "We're going to go back to Port Dover's going to have a one-room classroom. That's it. And everybody's going to work together because it's their school and they want their school back. They want that." I said, "That's what's going to end up happening, because you can't sustain financially these big monster schools they got. It's not working and kids aren't graduating and they're not being successful." So I said, "That's the way I see it going." I said, "You're going to end up with that, because the grade 7 kid will help the grade 2 kid, because that's all we have left that we can rely on. We don't have the money to do this." And I said, and they laughed at me, and then they thought about it. And they said, "That would have been probably more fun for us."
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. We're complicating things unnecessarily these days. That's
Oh,
what
too
we're
much
doing.
red tape. It's what you said about earlier.
We're
We're
complicating
worried
everything.
about saying right and wrong things.
Yep.
We actually need communities to actually, we
Mm-hmm.
need that old, and I don't want to sound reminiscent, but that feeling of embracement of a community, of a school.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
That's important. You know what I mean? When
Absolutely. Yep.
PDCS gone, right? My old
Yep.
school gone. There's
Mm-hmm.
Doverwood's gone.
Yep.
But that's, I understand that that's the financial things, but there could have been other ways at that point. But
Mm-hmm.
we're way off topic, and we shouldn't be holding these folks up. You and I get ranting, boy. Um, this bill's just, I get that you voted for it, and I respect you for that. But again, like you said, it doesn't. There's no meat and potatoes in it for me. That's all I'm going
No.
to say.
It's not a dangerous bill. There's just, and
Oh,
then that's why I
but is
voted.
it the integrity? They want to have an integrity minister. Let's talk
Yeah,
about that. Come
I
on
don't.
now. Come
Well,
on now.
again, it may be show and sham, right? It's all about creating the illusion. But there are school boards that need to be reined in. And it's that age old thing. I know many years ago when the province was largely running the business of school boards, people said, no, 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 we want the control in local hands. And then we put the control in local hands, and then local folks make a decision that locals don't like, and they say the province has to step in. So we're never happy.
But did you gather from this bill long term that the province wants to run them all? Like be in charge of that? That one, like, okay, it's us, that's it. School boards don't exist anymore?
No, I don't think the province wants to do that.
Okay. I
I
just
think
curious because
I
I
think
could
that's a
see that insight
dangerous
there.
road. They don't want to
Right.
be in the minutia of parent trustee. They don't want to deal with parents,
Well, they'll just
so
have
they're
the
never going to do
integrity
that.
minister. They will deal
Yeah,
with the parents.
yeah. I don't see that happening. I don't foresee that just because they don't want to be dealing with the daily minutia.
Maybe if they had to deal with it, they'd understand they need to fix it.
Oh, they understand it needs to be fixed. They don't have the political will to do it.
And that's Bobby
Anyway,
Ann telling her
you're going to
honest
get me in
opinion right
trouble.
there. That was you being totally honest.
You're gonna get me in a lot of trouble if the premier's watching.
Well, you know what? If he is, thanks for watching.
Yeah, that's right.
Hey, he can come on anytime with you and I and share his opinions because
Oh, that would be fun, wouldn't it?
maybe we're just not looking at it in right light.
Hey, and you and I would be respectful enough to listen.
You would be. Yep, you would be. Not even, don't include me. You would like beat me out. You would just have to beat me out and go, Dave, don't say it.
Yeah,
We
yeah,
actually would probably balance each other because then I could keep you, I could say, Bobby.
that's right. We could tag team that.
Yeah.
That'd be
But,
fun.
but, but you know what? They're trying. I guess that's all I'm going to leave it at today. They're trying.
Mhm.
I know we didn't get onto many subjects because that kind of just ate a half an hour, but give me a quick update on where you're going, what you're working on, and anything new and exciting.
Anything new and exciting? Well, I just came back from Probus, and I continue to talk about the need for these types of changes that we are continually talking about on here. This past week, I did a feel good thing, which is important too. We have to pay tribute to our volunteers. And so last week was National Volunteer Week. So I spoke in the House this week about volunteers and the fact that our communities would grind to a halt without them. And I gave a big shout out to the Heckersville Lions Club for their recent Catch the Ace. And people really liked that. But some of the things I'm working on, stay tuned.
Stay tuned.
Yeah.
Sidebar question. Any thoughts on parking in Port Dover? I did a podcast recently with Adam, and it seemed to stir a pot with some people. And
I don't like paying for parking no matter where I am.
well, you don't actually. You have to put the pass. Never mind. I won't. It's too
I
detailed.
I got into a little bit of a kerfuffle with the city of Hamilton recently over parking because I had into the little app. I was in a hurry because it took me 20 minutes to find a parking spot, and now I'm almost late for my appointment. And so in the app, I got the V and the W mixed up in my in the order of my license plate number, and I got a ticket. And I said to the guy at the city of Hamilton, I said, really? I said, the guy standing there next to my car could see the make and model that was punched into the system. He could see that I was like one letter, like just mixed up two letters, and you still taking me. Again, where's the common sense? Where's the discretion?
I remember standing. It was in Port Dover last summer, having lunch and watching an old fellow try and figure it out. And he literally
Oh,
came over and asked, "Could you help me?" Right? And I was like, "Yeah,
yeah.
sure, take a minute, and no problem." But I get it. I guess I just when you look at the numbers on all that, you kind of wonder financially if it's worth it. I remember in the '70s, I think there was in Delhi too. There was parking meters all over Port Dover. They tore
Mm-hmm.
them out. It got to the
Mm-hmm.
point where it was ridiculous. So
Yeah.
I hope
Yep.
they can figure out a solution that works for everybody.
Yeah, me too.
All
Yeah.
right.
All right. Well, I have to scoot because I got to be in Delhi by 1:30.
All right. You have a great day, and thanks for
All
your
right.
time.
Thanks, Dave. Yep.